You can't be charged with fraud, even on the civil side. There's no crime here, but you can't be charged with fraud if there's no fraud, if there's no victim, if there's been no harm. What's the harm? They can't even tell you what the harm is. But he's gotten away with it for years and years and years. Gotten away with what? Nothing. The spectacular evidence of how ridiculous this is, of course, is Mar-A-Lago. The evaluation put on there by Letita James and agreed to by the judge is $18 million. You couldn't buy that property for $18 million if your life depended on it. That's big leagues. And then when you calculate the building or the buildings, that building has been upgraded. That building was built by Marjorie Post, the daughter of the Post cereal family. And then when she took over the Post, because her father died at the age of around 50, she was like 28. She was the only, and certainly CEO of a major corporation, and she would turn out being the youngest, 28 years old, give or take. And she spent much of her life acquiring other companies you've heard of. She became enormously wealthy. So she builds this home on these over 20 acres at Mar-A-Lago. That's the name she gives it, Mar-A-Lago. It is the most fantastic real estate site and home on the Atlantic Ocean on the entire East Coast. It just is. I've been there. These gentlemen have been there. It looks like a museum almost. The ceiling is intricate. The walls are intricate. The floors. When Donald Trump bought it, it was a disaster. Because why? Because nobody could afford to live there anymore. So they couldn't afford the upkeep. I'm talking about people worth several $billion. And it's so majestic and so large, they didn't want to live there alone because, again, it's just too much to handle. And the property taxes are enormous. How is Mar-A-Lago worth $18 million? Can somebody explain that to me? I can explain it. This is a fraud trial. It is another disaster. He has to go in there and defend in a New York court the assessed valuation that was agreed to between him and a major bank on a property in Florida. And the guy comes up with $18 million because he's notoriously anti-developer? Crazy. And even Trump, he's not the only one that lives there. There are residences in Mar-A-Lago and another part of the estate for members who purchase into the residencies over there and so forth. And it's a whole production there. It's just fantastic. They have a major kitchen and on and on and on. So you can see what a lie this is. The fraud is this fraud case. Then we have a law in New York that says you don't actually have to commit fraud to be charged with fraud, you know. What? Well, who's damaged here? Who is damaged here? The banks aren't damaged. They haven't said they're damaged. They haven't said, in fact, they have said, and Donald Trump said, what are we doing here? Why are we involved in this thing? They don't want to be involved in litigation. Plus, their books are clean. Everybody's books are clean. Do you realize how much this guy's been investigated for tax fraud? What'd they come up with? Zero. Now they pull this stunt on the valuation of the property where they're out of their minds? So prior to this hearing the other day, the judge had already ruled that Trump was guilty of a pattern of fraud. He took Letita James's filing against him and took it as his own decision. A history and a pattern of fraud? Where? These properties have enormous value. Same with Trump Tower. That is enormous value. And to second guess it and to purposely put a ridiculous valuation on it, and then to force him and his family to come into court because the judge has already said, you're not going to be able to do any more development in New York. I'm pulling all your certificates. The question is only damages. So in appeal, Trump will win this thing. But now we're told the judge said with the last 5 minutes of the hearing yesterday, he said, after Trump's lawyers brought it up, wait a minute. Ever hear of statute of limitations? Some of these activities, the refinancing of properties took place, and it was before the statute of limitations had run, but now they've run. So regardless of what Letitia James thinks or this court thinks, they're not even supposed to be up for discussion. And the judge finally says, wow, you might be right about that on some of these properties. And then he tells the state, James, you need to provide an explanation for why the statute of limitations hasn't run in some of these cases. And that's the bulk of the cases now that are before the court. So I'm thinking to myself, well, hold on a second here. First thing you look at is if a party is standing. Are you supposed to be here? Do you have a right to be here? No, get your ass out of here. I got a full calendar of things I got to do. But if the statute of limitations runs, that's even worse. Not only don't you have standing because there's no legitimate case, you just brought me a phony case. And all this to do what, ladies and gentlemen? To get Trump. I don't know how this thing's going to end. I really don't. But Letitia James wanted $250 million to $300 million in damages. For whom? Over what? For whom? Over what? There's no tax fraud charge here. Well, he should have paid more. That's not being claimed. So you literally have a law in New York, apparently, which is utterly unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. You can't be charged with fraud, even on the civil side. There's no crime here, but you can't be charged with fraud if there's no fraud, if there's no victim, if there's been no harm. What's the harm? They can't even tell you what the harm is. But he's gotten away with it for years and years and years. Gotten away with what? Nothing. This is intended to humiliate him, to bankrupt him. When you have a property that's being litigated over in a court, it freezes the property. You can't sell it if you want to. You're stuck. And if you're told during the course of a case like this, we're going to take your building certificates away, your ability to develop, you're stuck. You can't do anything. And if you're doing that at a time when you know this man's a candidate for president, he's stuck. He can't be in South Carolina or Iowa or New Hampshire, any of it. That's why we know what's going on here. This is a complete fraud by the Attorney General's office, who ran and said what she was going to do in a general way, by the judge. I don't care how he rules at this point. This whole thing should have been thrown out on the papers. So what are you doing here? You got a statute of limitation problems, $18 million on Mar-A-Lago. A judge can do it. I just went on Google. I looked it up. That's idiotic. That's ridiculous. I'm just not going to go with this. That's not what they did. All right, now let's see how the initial aspect of this is covered by NBC News yesterday. Go.
Hey guys, this is the first look inside that courtroom. Our NBC camera is the pool camera here. They gave us a chance to shoot, so now we all see what's happening inside there as this trial gets underway.
Letitia
There's
James.
DA James, yep, right, sitting there. Actually, not at the front table. That's kind of interesting,
No,
isn't
it's
it?
not interesting. She's an idiot. If she stood up there and actually had to be in charge of this case, everybody would see what an idiot this woman truly is. She's not a real serious lawyer. So she puts her bureaucrats, her deputies up there to make the arrest. So she's now a spectator. If it were my case, I'd be up there arguing my case, the biggest case of her life, because she drags the former president into this phony case. This is the most publicity she's ever gotten, and they love it. These judges love it. The federal judges in Washington, they're excited. That DA in Georgia, when she was going on and on, it was like she was the chief actor in some sitcom. Go ahead.
Not trying the case, so she's sitting behind her attorneys.
Yeah, the Attorney General there.
Gee, that must have been a legal analyst. She's not trying the case. She's sitting behind the people who are trying the case. Wow. Go ahead.
James, thank you so much. And there you see President Trump, the former president.
Yeah, and he looks pissed off. And he should be pissed off. People are trying to steal everything he's built from him. his wealth, his liberty, trying to destroy what he can pass on to his children. And what the hell for? Because you decided to run for president again? Go ahead.
Next to his attorney,
Watch
and
this.
that's Chris Keyes, who we expect to make the opening statements here. And then this,
Judge Engoron.
I guess, is Judge Engoron. And
All right, right there. That guy shouldn't be running a Nathan's hot dog stand on the corner of any city, any block in New York. Look at this fool. Ooh, the cameras. Ooh. He's an elected Democrat judge in an all-Democrat area. Gee, how hard is that to get elected? This is why you can never argue for electing judges. Look at this buffoon. Would you even want him to represent you as a lawyer? And you can see he has a low IQ. I can just see that this guy has a low IQ. What? Go ahead. It's over, huh? Wow, that was... I just shake my head about what's going on here. It's just... it's so grotesque. And MSNBC, CNN, the other news operations, legal analysts on all networks, they take all this stuff seriously. Let me explain to you what's happening. No president has ever faced this. You know, this is another first with Trump. Here he is, charged with a civil case, and here he is. He can't come out of any of these things clean, even though he is, because you always have this this scarlet letter that you have to deal with. And there's some people out there, voters, they call them, who are so stupid, they just say, look, he's been charged civilly, he's been charged criminally in 4 cases, we got 91 indictments. I even heard one host say, well, he's got to be guilty of something, that's 91 charges. Are you saying he's not guilty of anything?
Want to see more? Sign up for Levin TV.